Okay, looks like we have everyone joined, so we can go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, welcome into another Course Key webinar, our first webinar of 2022. That's exciting. My name is Alex Weitzel. I'm the marketing manager at Course Key, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Elliot Snow, account executive extraordinaire. Hey Elliot, how are you?
Hey Alex, how's everybody doing? Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thank you guys for your time, for making time on a Friday. I see Rebecca says greetings. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, so today we're talking about how to help more students graduate on time by viewing major components of SAP in one place. So we have a really great presentation lined up for you all today. We're going to talk about one of the issues that we've seen in the career ed space and really how Course Key is helping schools kind of navigate that and tackle that issue. But before we get into the presentation, I have just a few housekeeping notes. So the first thing is, oops, not yet. The first thing is, for those of you familiar with Course Key webinars, you may know that we used to do an hour-long webinar each month. And for 2022, we're going to change that up a bit. We're going to switch to 30 minutes per webinar, but we're going to be offering 2 webinars per month. So instead of the 1 hour long each month, we're going to do 2 different webinars and have them be a bit shorter. So we'll give you some more of your time back and also offer a bit more different types of content for you and some more value in other areas. So that's what you can expect in 2022. You'll see some more of these webinar invites coming through. The second thing is that this webinar is recorded. So all of our attendees, you will be getting a recording of this webinar in your email, most likely on Monday, since we're doing this on Friday. So you can look out for that. You can share it with whoever you'd like, rewatch it. You can do whatever you'd like with it. And the last thing is that we do have time at the end of this webinar for Q&A. So you might hear or see some things during the session that you have questions about. We encourage you to put those questions into either the chat or the Q&A function on your Zoom screen, and we'll get to as many as we have time for at the end. Okay, last thing before we jump into this webinar, quick introduction to Course Key. So who is Course Key? We are a software provider for the career education space. So we create many solutions, most of which are student-driven mobile applications designed for any learning environment, really. Whether it's on ground or online or hybrid or blended programs, our solutions are really robust and are designed for any environment. We also provide real-time analytics to staff and admins and instructors for data gathered from the classroom, and we help you visualize that data and make it really easy to analyze and create actionable insights. And yeah, the third thing here, products purpose-built for career education providers. We really pride ourselves on creating solutions specifically for the career education space. We don't want you to have to use software that isn't necessarily designed for your use case. And that last bullet there, we've raised about $25 million in venture funding. And what that really does is it allows us to quickly build those products specifically for career ed, and then offer a world-class support as well. All right, I see 2 things come through the chat. Okay, it's just Deb. Great. All right, let's dive into why we're here today. So really the underlying theme for our webinar today is retention. And we've talked with a lot of different schools, and we know that just about every school has some room for improvement when it comes to retention. And today we're going to talk about something that goes into that retention, which is student satisfactory academic progress. So here in italics, you can see institutions don't have timely access to the data that they need. And as a result, when students don't meet that SAP requirements, they are automatically dropped. And that's one of the issues that Course Key is looking to tackle for these schools. And I want to turn it over to Elliot. And Elliot, because you have talked with so many different schools and you know a lot about this issue, I would just want to start by asking you, like, why is it that institutions don't have that timely access to the data that they need?
It's a good question and it's a good prompt, and we've got really three kind of bullets as to why that is. But I'll just say one thing, and it really ties into the work that we're doing, working with career education schools like the ones that you guys joining today are with. Satisfactory academic progress is something that every school cares about. Retention is something that every school cares about. The two are very closely aligned, but we have identified some places where it's not easy to see pacing progress in some places. It's not easy to look at the certain components of SAP. And so what we've built and what we're excited to show you guys today is going to tie into that. But really the first bullet, ties into that, which is attendance and academics, which are two primary components of satisfactory academic progress. From our research and talking to customers, they're collected from different systems. Very often, they're often, maybe stored, the academics are in the LMS, the attendance is in the SIS, you've got paper records that are being stored. So what we found when talking to different schools is that it's just all over the place. And often there's this reporting that has to be done out of each system. And it's just not aligned, and it can be, disconnected. So that's one place, one reason why it's a challenge is that it's a lengthy and arduous process to pull down pace and progress from these different systems. Number two is, Alex, if you wouldn't mind going to the next bullet. Schools are relying heavily on their faculty and staff to get records on time. So when I say records, I'm saying attendance records every week for every student. I'm saying academic records from the LMS, making sure those assignments are being put in on time. And we get it. These faculty they've got a lot on their plate already. A lot of them are part-time faculty, especially. They've got many other things that they're focused on. And so getting those records in the system, getting them to the registrar, getting them to the right person at the right time can sometimes be challenging. It's something that we heard over and over and over again. And it's just the nature of it. We're reliant on these faculty and staff today to enter records on time. One other thing I'll say too about that is COVID has introduced, this new wave of challenges. Many schools have had to move to a hybrid model. Many schools have had to move into a place where administrators don't have the same oversight that they used to. So we're more reliant than ever on the frontline managers, the frontline instructors to give us that information every day and every week, and that can be a challenge. And then finally, kind of tying it all together, it can take days. This is what we heard when we spoke to schools, when we were developing this tool. It can take days or even weeks for an institution to know if a student is behind their pace and progress, to know that they're not meeting satisfactory academic progress. And obviously, there's a big impact of that if a student gets close to or does not meet those requirements. And so that's where it all comes down to. Students are dropping out. They're being automatically dropped because these factors are at play. And I think that's something that we're here to help with. And we'll show you guys how we do that today.
Thanks, Elliot. Yeah, so those things that Elliot mentioned, really the high level impact that can have on an institution and the students is really powerful. And the first thing you can see here, students will continue to drop before they complete their program if this issue isn't addressed. And not only is that bad for the school, but also, of course, the student. Like, their goal is to get placed into a job in their field of study, and that is not happening if they are being automatically dropped. And another impact of that is it could be detrimental to the school's reputation. Students might be evaluating schools and looking at the retention and graduation rates from the past from that school, and might say, this other school has higher rates, and I think I'll have a higher chance of success at a different school. So that can be an impact. And then, of course, fewer students enrolled in your programs amounts to less revenue collected by the school.
And we want to help you. We want to help you schools recapture lost revenue. We want to help you, maintain, improve that retention rate. And that's what we built this tool to do. We're here to help.
So as we've said already, without timely access to the data, institutions can't see that students are not meeting SAP requirements, and those students are automatically dropped. So where does that leave you? That leaves institutions in the dark. And the dark is not a good place to be because you're really left making educated guesses and about a student's pace and progress. And now we have these images in here for dramatic effect, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. And so that's kind of why we're here today, of wanting to show you how Courskey is empowering institutions to help more of their students graduate on time. So I'm going to let Elliot take over the screen here, and he is going to show us the cool part of today's webinar.
And I know this is what you all came here to see, so we'll jump right in. What's been really exciting too is this is something we've been developing for a long time. For the past few months, it's come out of a result of painstaking and lengthy interviews with schools, with customers, with prospective customers. And so it's finally here. We're really excited to share with you guys and actually show you what it all looks like. So I'm assuming you guys can see a screen okay. What you're seeing here, this is like the starting point. This is going to be the initial dashboard that combines a lot of the data that we're talking about. But like I said, I'll just start first by saying, when we spoke to these schools, we just heard it over and over again. They were frustrated that their attendance and academic data was not collected in one place. It wasn't easy to collect it in many instances, pulling it down from different places. And as a result, not easy to identify if a student is at risk. We all know every school has a different way that they look at that. Schools are meeting weekly for retention meetings. Schools are, they've got student success teams who manage this. But if those student success teams and those administrative teams don't know every day if students are wavering, then that's a problem. And that's why we developed this. So what you're seeing here is the result of this development. It's a way to automatically pull and import the data from different places. And usually we're looking at a few key sources. Let's see, I'll click over into our data sources here. So there's usually 3 places right now we're pulling from. The first is going to be Courskey. So for those that use Courskey's synchronous attendance solution today, this is capturing student attendance on an hourly basis. It's also understanding if those students are showing up on time or showing up late. There's a number of other value adds to the Courskey synchronous attendance solution, but that's one place that we'll look at the data from. The second is the SIS. So we know a lot of you use a student information system. Campus Nexus is an example of that, but that's going to give us more information about students, programs, and it's going to stay up to date. And then finally, the LMS. This is where a lot of that asynchronous work is taking place. This is where the academics takes place. So these are the places that we are pulling data from today, and we're doing it automatically through integrations, through API connectivity. But listen, what it really comes down to is it creates this risk score and this profile for every student that's at your school. So what you can see here is a running list of students. This is actually ranked by those that are at highest risk down to ones that are at a lower risk. And because we're looking at attendance data, we're looking at academic data, we're able to basically assign a risk score based on how well a student is performing, how close they are to what's acceptable for pace and progress. So for example, this student is at 70% attendance. That's going to be lower than desired. That's going to be really close to like the SAP threshold. And that's a reason that they have a high risk score. In addition to lateness, this is the second factor we look at. This is effectively tardiness. How many minutes after a class starts is a student showing up in aggregate? That can give us a lot of relevant information. And honestly, this is probably not information many of you have access to today, but the synchronous attendance solution with Courskey would give it to you. We also look at last activity recorded. So this is just how many days since a student recorded an activity, whether that was submitting an assignment in the LMS or just checking into class. And then finally, academics. That's going to represent grades. That's going to represent how well that student is doing in the academic field. So this is really where we're pulling a lot of this together. I'll dive into that a little bit deeper in a minute, but before I do, I want to click into configurations here and show you guys one thing, because one thing that we heard over and over again is that some schools wanted to know if a student had hit the SAP threshold, let's say 66% progress for attendance. But other schools wanted to know, is the student just getting close? Like, are they at 80% attendance? Are they at 70% attendance? So we built a way to allow schools to customize what they look at and how they look at them. So for example, these are the risk factors. You could, in theory, take lateness out of it if you didn't want to look at that as a different factor. These are fully customizable by the schools, but we're also looking at, you know, different weights. We can actually weight certain things more than others. So for example, this nursing program, they want to weight attendance at the highest. Attendance is really, really important for a nursing program. We want to know, you know, if any student is falling behind from an attendance standpoint. So these are actually customizable, as are the thresholds. So if we want to know if a student is falling below 80%, 90%, that is up to you guys, and that is customizable as well. They have to add up to 100. And then the final thing is these risk scores. So this is, if we want to know, you know, change what severe means to your school. This was bred once again because some schools wanted to know if a student was just getting close to being at risk, and others just wanted to know if a student was extremely at risk. And there's some preferences there. It depends on the size of the school. It might depend on the programs. You know, you can imagine a student success team, they might have a certain number of students they're able to manage on a weekly basis for those that might be at risk, ones that they could intervene with. So it just depends on what numbers that school is capable of managing. All right. So we'll come back here, and this is once again going to be the output. This is going to be a risk trend dashboard. It's actually going to show within the last week how many students have entered into a risk threshold. Of the 2,000 students at the school, how many are at severe risk? 20, 140 at high risk. So this is going to change and fluctuate every day and every week as we get new information and data in. But then really where it comes down to is, imagine this: a student success team or manager just opens up Courskey every day, once a day, and can see who is at the highest risk, and then use that to initiate outreach, to initiate intervention, and really get those students back on track. So let's take Chelsea Miller, for example. If we click in here, we can actually see that Chelsea entered in the last week. She went from a 25 risk score to a 76 risk score, which is very severe. That probably means she missed a bunch of class, she didn't show up or check in, or her academic data is a lot lower than it was before. So we're able to take that information in and spit out this risk score. It's going to fluctuate, but ultimately a student success manager could go in, they could message the student through Courskey, or they could do their normal intervention process. And frankly, this is just going to happen a lot quicker than it is for most schools today. We're not waiting on somebody to tell us a student didn't show up. We're not waiting on anything. It's all being fed in here automatically. The cool thing, we kind of developed this as like a FICO score for education, if you really think about it. And it's a proprietary thing that we're really proud of. All right. So we'll come back here. Let's see. I think there was one final thing. Yes. So we heard a lot that schools, listen, they don't have access to this information as easily as they want to, and we've given them that. But a lot of other schools say, hey, we're moving around really quickly. We're moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. We just want to be alerted when a student is at risk. And so we actually created a daily alert that can notify and send an email when any student has entered a low risk threshold, a medium risk threshold, a high risk threshold. So this can be turned on, and we can send an email to customizable list of administrators and effectively tell them, hey, Chelsea Miller just moved into the risk score, medium risk threshold. It's time to reach out, understand why she didn't show up to class, and understand what's going on. We're giving the control back to administrators. We're giving it back to the teams that are responsible for that retention number. So this was all developed. It's continuing to be in development. We're going to be coming out with new additions to it, but we're really excited to show this. This is going to be applicable to a number of different career education schools and verticals. Allied health schools are using this. They're starting to, cosmetology, and a number of other trade schools. So it's very applicable if you are tracking satisfactory academic progress, if you are focused on retention and you want a better way to intervene more proactively and more on time. So I will pause there and stop the share and pass it back over to Alex to continue the webinar.
Thanks, Elliot. It's really cool to see how that's come together. All right, let me get that presentation up. Cool, so we can move on to the next. Oops. All right, you're on for this slide, Elliot.
Perfect. Yeah. So like I said, what are the key takeaways? First is going to be we're automatically collecting the data that was historically being collected manually. Different staff are having to pull down reports from different places. With this, we automatically collect it because we're connected to the systems already. And then that feeds the data, that feeds the dashboard. It can feed the trends and other things that are there. Number two, you can customize those risk thresholds. Once again, you can align it with your satisfactory academic progress numbers, or you can make it so that you know when a student is just teetering on the brink of being at risk so that you can get involved even earlier on. And then three, the daily alerts to administrators and staff about which students have entered a risk threshold, have stayed at a risk threshold, so that you know which students to focus on, to intervene with, and to hopefully get back on track. And in early testing of this, we are seeing schools that are putting it into action. They're seeing a 2 to 3% lift in retention very, very quickly, just from being more proactive, not waiting days or weeks to intervene against those students. So those are the big takeaways, and appreciate you guys taking a look.
Awesome. Yeah, this is really exciting stuff, and I think this paired with the tools that we give students as well to kind of take accountability for their own pace and progress is really helpful for getting those retention and graduation rates up. So at this time, I'd like to open up the Q&A session to our audience. Let us know if there's any questions that you have about what you've seen, what you've heard so far. I'll give you guys a few seconds or a minute here to put your questions in. I see we had one come through, and Elliot, I'm going to toss this over to you. It says, can you confirm if we're able to sort at-risk students by program?
Yes, it's a question that we've gotten before. A lot of schools want to be able to assign ownership to specific administrators of a specific set of students. And so as long as those students are grouped by a program, as the question asks, we can group it that way so that certain individuals, certain leaders, program directors will see the students that are in their program specifically.
Okay, thank you. Another one that came in, it says, do students have access to the student page?
So at this time, we did not make it so that students can see this. This is geared for administrators and staff. It's a really good question. I think that's going to be happening down the line, but there's some sensitivity, right? If we were to notify, for example, a student that they've entered a risk threshold, that could be perceived in a good way or a bad way. So we want to give that control to the administrators, which is why right now it's geared for you guys, and giving you the tools to intervene in the way that you are comfortable with and even doing today.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so one last call for questions. Looks like those were all the ones that were submitted. Oh, we had one just come through. It says, do you give a baseline configuration?
Yes. So there's going to be a standard configuration that would come with this tool. And as part of the rollout, our implementation team would sit down and really understand what your goals were. Like I said, if you want to know if a student is just teetering on the brink of risk or is just meeting the standard set of risk, we'll work with you guys on that, and we will help you customize that as part of the initial setup. And then over the course of time, if you do want to make changes, if you want to test something out for certain programs, we highly encourage it. We do have schools who are starting to change those thresholds and those weights in order to get that information in a way that suits them best. So absolutely, that was the reason we built it this way, but there's definitely a standard way we'd recommend setting it up, and our team would work with you to do that.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we had one question come in, say, how do I contact you? So I think that's a good transition into our last part of the webinar. So we really have an offer that we'd like to offer to our attendees today. And we want to give you the first 90 days free for this new retention tool. And the way that you can show your interest or let us know that you'd like to be contacted is to leave your information in this post-webinar survey. It's going to pop up once the survey or once the webinar is finished. And if you have any questions, you can contact me, Alex Weitzel, at alex@korsky.com. And just so you know, by leaving your information in that survey, it does not mean you're committing to anything. It really just gives us a way to contact you and speak with you about how this tool can impact your institution and your programs. So that's the webinar, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. We're really excited about how this is going to impact career education. I want to thank Elliot and Deb in the background as well. And that's it. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to seeing you guys at the next webinar.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a good one. Have a great weekend, everyone.